Hi, my name is Kendall Russo. I am a relationship manager with Comerica. I was going to say all the words on that screen, but I guess everyone can read them. So, just high level, born and raised in the Seattle area. Went to Baylor, and then now work at Comerica Bank. So, have been there for a little over 8 years. Just actually came back from maternity leave. I have a 2-year-old son and then a 3-month-old daughter. So, super fun. We are in the thick of what feels like chaos, but it's a lot of fun. So really excited to talk about workplace identity. And yeah, from there, I think we can maybe dive into the deck. Fantastic. So the topic today that I chose was workplace identity, how we measure success and value as women in the workplace. And I think this is a topic that I has been near and dear to my heart for a long time because it's something that with every role that I've served within Comerica, it's shifted and changed a little bit. And I do really feel like I'm in a place now where I have a good handle on kind of the value that I bring to the table, and then ultimately then how that impacts my success in my position. And so excited to talk to you more about that evolution, as well as maybe some practical tips that you can take to, kind of craft your identity, and then how that will then impact how you are perceiving your value, as well as then the success that you have in your job. So with that, I think we're good to go to the first slide. Fantastic. So just to kind of create, the definitions, right? I think defining terms is important. So what I kind of chose for the workplace identity, I found a quote I liked is, workplace identity refers to the professional concept that individuals develop within their working environment. It's based off of roles, tasks, experiences, relationships, values, and practices. So because I do think that identity is really kind of the core at which we then operate, right? How we have our value system, and then ultimately then how we perceive success. And so, but it's funny because when I see professional self-concept, I do think that a lot of us can fall into either the ideal, right, where we have a very idealistic belief in ourselves and our abilities. And then maybe some of us fall into kind of the more real, right? So we see, okay, there are certain things we bring to the table, but obviously there's a lot of growth. And then maybe some of those that fall into the less than ideal. And so kind of those three camps, I think are, and maybe some of us are kind of in all three, but where I think it's important when we're looking at kind of professional self-concept is understand where our bent is. And I think for me personally, I can tend to camp a little bit too much in the less than ideal and really just maybe get overwhelmed or discouraged with the shortcomings that I have and just the huge gap between myself and my peers as far as performance. And so I think that when that happens, I think when we can take a step back and realize, okay, if that is my bent is to just focus on kind of the less than ideal self-concept, then it's an opportunity for us to lean into ways in which we are succeeding in the moment, in ways that we are living into our values at that time and place. And so where I think, my encouragement to you is if you're falling into the ideal, right, where maybe challenge isn't as exciting to you, right? You really like to just feel like you're successful all the time, to kind of lean in maybe a little bit more to, ways in which you can improve, because that's also a way that you can grow and be challenged. So I think with that, we'll go to the next slide. So defining success. So obviously, a majority of us work in a place, sorry, I just want to make sure I wasn't on mute. I saw that comment. We work in a place that has objective standards for success, right? So I think that it can be sometimes tough, especially coming into a new role when, my performance is just objectively not successful as a new kind of employee or a new coworker into this new culture that you're stepping into. And so where I have learned to kind of grow and challenge is in those times when I feel very much like the success and the expectations of me are just very outside of my reach, right? Like we're in a new role, we've taken on a new project. And so where that identity comes into play is understanding, okay, my success may look different in this moment, right? And granted, this is a conversation to really be having with managers to make sure that, success is a realistic expectation. But when we can take a step back and say, okay, there's a lot of things outside of my reach, but there are things within my reach, right? I think that can be really helpful in our careers to maybe just take things at a little bit smaller pace and a little bit smaller bites so that we can in certain ways thrive even in really uncomfortable and difficult situations, because we're maybe doing, if our strength is positivity and it's engaging with other people, but we're around a lot of people that have a lot of expectations. If we can still live into our strengths, there's ways to be successful even when it may not necessarily look that way on paper or just objectively, right? Because I think that where we can thrive is when we can still live into our identity in maybe areas that are unique to the group and mindset that we're in. And again, I think that dialogue is so important, of communicating with your manager of, this may feel overwhelming, this may be a lot, okay, but I still have strengths that I can live into and bring to the table that may not produce metrics. Like I'm in a sales role, and so part of my job is bringing in new business, or I'd say most of my job is bringing in new business. And so especially starting out in this role, the metrics weren't necessarily there, but the behaviors were. And so what I was able to do is lean into the fact that I love meeting new people. I am very relational. And so that is part of my identity that I can lean into and grow in, even though the metrics aren't there right away. There's still success being had because I'm living into that and still passionately pursuing that. And then eventually the metrics, will come. So I think we're good to go. And that kind of goes into the measuring success, which is the next slide. And that is, again, right. So it can impact our perception of success outside the workplace, but then also within. So, and I'm sure we can, all of the, moms and wives and people that have relationships outside of work, which hopefully is all of us, right? There are times where it feels like we're firing on all cylinders, maybe in one area, but then another area, it just feels like we're just struggling. And, and I think, with little children right now, it can sometimes, when children are in the other room screaming, it can just sometimes feel like that area is just not firing on all cylinders right now. But I think that to take a step back and understand, what does success look like in this moment? And it's just to be faithful in the little things. And it's, like with little children, right? It's just, you're just faithful in the little things, and you hope and pray that eventually that will reap into really well-behaved, respectful children. And you just kind of lean into it, because it just sometimes in the moment when they're screaming and crying, it doesn't feel like you're really getting anywhere. And I think that same as work, right? When we're in difficult relationships or situations, when we can lean in and do the little things well, you do hope, and over time, and I really do believe that it will reap success. It's just having the patience and contentment to be willing to do the hard things now, to know that success will come, and it's same kind of inside and outside work. So with that, then how do we kind of define value, right? So we kind of, success, I like to think of as kind of more external. Value is a little bit more, kind of internal, right? So how are we perceiving that I'm bringing value to the table? And so, defining value is by offering, next slide. That's okay. Awesome. So defining value. So again, by offering unique perspectives, that is another way that we can bring value, right? And it may not always result in success, but I think that when we can seek to bring value in ways that maybe outside of kind of the typical, it may not be your sales goals, right? But I can bring value to the table to my team by, industry knowledge, the fact that I know Comerica systems pretty well. And so little things and little ways that you can seek to bring value to your team that will build success kind of outside of you and outside of your team even. And so I think, I love this quote: by thoughtfully mobilizing your identity, you can have a significant impact on your organization. And the hope is that smart organizations will reward you for your efforts. And so, like, I think the theme here is kind of, leaning into that identity and the ideal, right? So my ideal identity is someone who's very patient, who's very on top of it, but is undeterred when the waves hit, right? When things seem like yesterday was just out of my reach, like everything, you're just getting bombarded by emails and calls, and it just feels like I'm not really being successful. I don't really feel like I'm bringing a lot of value. But if I can take a breath and just, okay, what can I do now that will, that will meet the needs, that meet the demands of today without allowing it to consume me and without losing that positive energy that I like to bring to my clients. And so I think it's by living into that identity and saying, okay, like success today may not be 24-hour turnaround on every single one of my emails that hit my inbox, because that's usually my goal. But sometimes it's not lowering the bar, but it's just reassessing what success and value looks like every day, within the parameters of your performance review, because there are days where success may look, or there will be days where success and bringing value to the table is going to look different, but you can still be successful and have value, or add value by still being consistent and living into that identity. So, and then kind of the last slide being the measuring value. And so, I think that what I like to focus on a lot of times when things feel overwhelming is, progress instead of results. It's the little by little, inch by inch, by the yard it's hard, by the inch what a cinch. Like, it's a little quote I learned at camp a long time ago. And I do think that it's sometimes understanding and learning that it's not always going to be like the big things that you accomplish in a day, but if you can be faithful in the little things, it will bring results. It's just having the patience to understand that a lot of times you're not going to see that right away. As well as, communicating expectations. So that's something I really try to do on days when I feel overwhelmed is, communicating to my manager or to my clients, hey, I see your email and I understand that this is pressing. I'm going to try to get to it as soon as I can. And I think kind of setting those boundaries. So then that way, you're still kind of meeting the client need without feeling like it's kind of driving you. And again, I think bringing value is a process, and finding the things about you that are really valuable. It does take time. And obviously the person that you start out with in your job or in your company is going to be hopefully way different in 5-10 years as you are doing the little things that are that are just kind of, the day in, day out, and, maybe call it a grind, but I think it's just an opportunity to be better and not necessarily need results to feel encouraged to keep doing the good things every day. So, with that, I saw a question in the chat, would love to, try to make this as interactive as possible. I know y'all are super busy, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but would love to just, hear any feedback or any comments or questions. I think there's one in the chat, but I think if we wanted to open it up too, if you wanted to unmute yourself, right, Ginger? I think we were saying we could do that.
Yes, thank you everyone for logging in today. So yes, if you would like to ask a live question, you can raise your hand via Zoom and I can unmute you. But also please keep those questions coming into the chat. So for our first question, we'll go to this one from Anna, and she says, I began maternity leave for the first time. What was the most unexpected thing you learned when returning to work?
It's a good question. I think the most unexpected, and this is, and that's this is the second maternity leave that I've gotten under my belt. So it's been nice to kind of, I knew what to expect a little bit more on this one. I was really hoping, I have this big deal I'm working on, and I was really hoping it got done, and it didn't. So my team is awesome, but, so that's kind of more on the funny side, but, I think the value of having a supportive manager, I didn't really realize how much that meant to me, because it's both times. It's been tough going back. I love my kids, and not to say that, you can't love your kids and love to go back to work, but it's hard. It's hard to go back to work when you just got, Comerica gives 3 months, which is just a wonderful opportunity to just get time with your family. And so, I wasn't necessarily surprised it was going to be hard, but I think it's just tough to sometimes feel like, you can't always be there for every little moment. However, it is really neat to see that, when you have a really supportive boss and manager, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's a compromise to have to go back to work, because you feel supported, and, and your kids are getting great experiences, whether that be daycare or with the nanny. And so does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll go to our next question we'll go to the question from Samantha. And Samantha says, could we get that quote, the yard and inch quote?
Oh, sure. So it actually is a little bit longer, and I can say it a little, but it's, Little by little, inch by inch, by the yard, it's hard, by the inch, what a cinch. Never stare up the stairs, just step up the steps, little by little, inch by inch. And I feel like there's a lot of times I have to just, okay, little by little, like the emails are just coming in, I mean, in, 1,800 emails coming back on maternity leave, it was like, okay. And this time I made the decision, like last time I went through every individual email, I filed them, I made sure everything was addressed. And this time, because, I went on maternity leave May 4th, came back August 13th, anything before July 13th, I just deleted. I was like, I'm just going to set that boundary. If they really needed it, there's probably someone CC'd on it. So I think, that is something I really encourage you, if you can, to just, try not to feel like you have to be 100% caught up after week one. It's going to take time. And, maybe if some emails, maybe that's bad to say, but you just can't, it's just a lot. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That makes us all feel better.
Oh, gosh.
So I think we'll have time for maybe one more question from Bailey. And she says,
Sure.
and then yes, and so then we'll ask you for final thoughts. And Bailey says, how have you learned to cope when you did not reach the success you planned?
I think where I've even had to do yesterday, right? Like I was out and about and I had a ton to do at work, but I had 3 clients that wanted to meet and all 3 of them flaked while I was like driving all around Dallas trying to meet them. And all 3 of them ended up not showing up as I was driving. And I think I had to take a step back and realize, okay, like what are the things that I've done well today? I was available for my team. I took a few phone calls. I got a few emails out. While driving, I had to pump in the baking center bathroom because, I was out and my daughter needed milk. And so it was just one of those days that it felt very chaotic, but like, hey, I got my daughter milk. I was able to, I still made the effort and those clients saw that. I got a few emails out. And so, not that you're lowering the bar, but I think you're just kind of allowing yourself to take the wins and maybe redefine how you take wins because, you're still doing things well. Like if you're showing up at work and you're doing the right things, even if maybe you didn't get 100 emails out and, 10 emails instead of 100, that's still something. And, and then, tomorrow is a new day and, maybe try to get a little bit more emails done. But, I think just kind of keeping that positive momentum and energy to just keep doing the little things because the little things will add up, even if it doesn't feel like it on a Monday.
Well, thank you so much. Well, everyone, Kendall's going to come back with in return for our panel discussion in a little bit. But any final thoughts on this topic before we move on to our next speaker?
Just obviously, if you have any follow-up, I'm hopefully, if there's any, questions or anything you'd like to talk about, I'm on LinkedIn and email. Should be included in the deck. If not, I'll make sure to include that. So if you ever want to reach out and just chat or connect, I'd love the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much.